When was the first time you remember getting thrown from a horse? Not literally. When did something happen that changed how you saw yourself, other people, or God? Welcome to the Outrider Podcast. Today we're going to talk about the downed rider. We'll spend some time unpacking in these first few episodes what the Outrider is about and the scenes of the painting from Charles Vogel called My Bunkie. And in that scene, there are four characters playing different roles. One of them is the downed rider. He's the one that's being rescued. Then there is the rescuer, who is the one with his sleeves rolled up, reaching down to pull his comrade to safety. And then there are two soldiers in the back. And as I explain in the book, The Outrider, Become the Man You Needed, the one in the back is the outrider. That's the role that we're to play. And the one riding right beside him is the Holy Spirit. And the whole purpose of becoming an outrider is to step into our roles as beloved sons and to embrace our beloved identity and to walk with the Holy Spirit, being raised and trained to partner with Jesus so that we can do what you see in that very image of that painting. And that's escort people from where they are, hurting hearts, to an encounter with Jesus. And the Holy Spirit is our guide. Jesus is our hero, and we are the co-heirs, as Romans 8 says, to partner with them. A downed rider is a beloved son or daughter with a hurting heart who has been derailed from the glory God has for them. Guys, what comes to your mind when you hear that definition of a downed rider? Somebody derailed, kicked off their horse, knees cut out from underneath them, just removed from the glory that God has for them.
For me, I think maybe I'm sitting here having a hard time with that word derailed. Derailed from their glory. Oftentimes because a person may or may not have a choice in whether or not they're downed or not, Right. Because life happens. Things that are sometimes beyond our control, that we don't have any say over, can put us down sometimes. So I'm just wrestling with the thought or the idea that like glory is lost, or glory, that God bestows or puts on us, like, is lost. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, it's not glory lost, it's derailed. Like the trajectory of moving towards or in the path of your glory, the enemy loves to take us away from that destination or get us off course.
So maybe it's worth it to just kind of unpack what does it mean to live in the glory that God has bestowed upon us.
So all of us are uniquely created in God's image, right? As both male and female, from Genesis 1:26 and 27, where God had created mankind in his image. And the first command was to be fruitful and multiply, to rule and subdue. And that's the glory, right? And what is it that God created you to do? What did he create you to be fruitful in? What did he create you to rule and to subdue? And that doesn't mean to power over, right? That means that what has God placed within the charge of your care? What has he created you, endowed you with, if you will, the authority to be able to care for well? And whatever that may be, there's a lot of stuff in this world that needs to be done. I can't be you, you can't be me, and we both can't be Ian.
That's
and
right.
So the way that works is for us to step into who it is that God has uniquely created us to be. How has he designed us to move toward hearts, to move away from hearts, to embrace those who are hurting, to do what Jesus said, to love the unlovable, to touch the untouchable. That's not for everybody. Not everybody is called to be a counselor. Not everybody's called to be a pastor. Not everybody's called to be a CEO. I hear the guy on the lawnmower outside. I hope you can't hear that on the podcast, but not everybody runs the lawn mowing business, or not everybody is a carpenter. Not everybody is a physician. Not everybody is a dentist. Not everybody is a school teacher, whatever it may be. And definitely not everybody's operating in what it is that God wants to partner with them in. And so that's the glory, is what does God want to bring into your world by way of something that only you uniquely can bring. That's the glory that God created to you to bring through you into this world. And so we'll kind of jump ahead a little bit into a couple of chapters later in the story. I talk about this thing called the drift angle. In aviation, if you're 1 degree off of your destination within 60 nautical miles, you will be 1 complete mile off of your destination. So you have to recalculate so that you can get back on course.
Right.
Right. So if you're off by 1 degree and then in 60 nautical miles, you're 1 mile off, what happens in 2 miles or 10? What if you put those into years? Instead of a mile, it's a year or a season of life. The longer you live, the further off track you can be. And when you begin to believe more lies, or you get even more than 1 degree, and if a degree is a lie, it doesn't take long for you to be moving in the opposite direction of what God intended for your life, what he wants to partner with you in. So the derailment is not, I've lost my glory. It's, I'm not moving in it. And so I say this, not in a lot of places, because there are religious ears that don't allow this to be comprehended. Jesus, I've said that before, that he didn't teach the good news of salvation. He taught the good news of the kingdom. And likewise, Satan is not as concerned about your salvation. I honestly, wholeheartedly believe that he doesn't care so much about whether or not you go to heaven or hell. What he is afraid of, however, and he is afraid, is that you get to operate in that glory. Right. That you move from teknon to weos. Teknon being the word for child in Romans 8:14. Those who are the sons of God, the child of God, the children of God. That's teknon. It's like my youngest son or my little grandkids. It represents a familial connection. But the word weos that he uses in Romans 8:19 for son of God, sons of God, children of God, represents a fully mature co-heir. This is someone to whom I will entrust with my authority. I will give you the keys to my kingdom. That word was used of Jesus, weos. And here it is, Paul telling us to become weos, right? To stand fully and completely in who God has created us to be. And then he continues on in Romans 8:18 that our sufferings aren't worth comparing to the glory that God will reveal in us. And then 8:19, for creation is longing for the children of God, the weos, the fully mature sons and daughters of God, to be revealed. That's what Satan is afraid of, because when we are operating as weos with the belovedness that flows through us and the authority that comes from that relationship and process of maturing in the kingdom of heaven, we get to bring the kingdom of heaven into our space. And when that happens, he loses authority everywhere that you step. That's what he's afraid of. He knows the end game.
Yeah.
He knows the end game. He doesn't know all the steps through there, but he knows the end game. Mm-hmm. So he doesn't want to lose what he has today. Mm-hmm. And the easiest way to do that is to shoot you off of your horse, mm-hmm. or not even let you learn how to ride, mm-hmm. so that the authority of the kingdom of heaven doesn't make its way. There's no ruling, there's no subduing, there's no fruitful, there's no multiply. It's the same scheme he's been up to from the beginning.
Yeah, I think that's why we relate to. There's a lot of thoughts that come up for me with this. I think about all the stories in the office that I've had with people where life was going okay and then something devastating happened and they are still trying to comprehend it 30 years later of like, why did that happen to me then? And and it's this pressure that I know when I was early on in not just counseling but in ministry, trying to help give an answer to someone that would comfort their heart from a wound so long ago, that really fits in this idea of downrider and profound stories of resilience and grit, but people can't see that. What they see is the pain of why this thing happened. And growing up with my kids, we encourage imagination. We love good story. And Anakin comes up for me as I think about this story of the downrider. This journey that for us, we're Star Wars nerds, and my boys know all the lore. So if you say something wrong, they'll correct you, real quick, and tell you where that planet was and all this stuff. It's pretty amazing to see the depth of knowledge I have.
Have they corrected you about the Outrider yet? Because it's a spaceship in the Star Wars canon.
No. They're excited about this book. And
Awesome.
I was talking to my oldest son the other day about it, and I put some plugs just where I was at for you. With this as well, because I just sat with a group of men that have been down, all of them, downriders, and not knowing what to do with it. And is there a space that I can go and be able to share that I got shot off my horse and don't know what to do with that? And often where I see it go is self-blame. Like, what did I do wrong to be shot off my horse? No matter the age. I know you've seen that.
For sure.
And, that story with Anakin, you watch this guy's journey and the potential that he has. And it wasn't just one thing, it was a series of things. And that's what comes up, for me in my story too. It's like, man, I've got, and we all do, several events and whatnot. But then when you see Anakin finally just turn to Darth Vader and you're like, what? Like, that's not how it's supposed to go, or like, because of his pain, this is what he decides to do. Or like with the Matrix, like, when Neo's approached with this idea that he's the one, it's like, I'm not the one. I can't be the one. And it's because of how many times I've been knocked down. Like, I think we all, but especially as men, like we long to try to pull meaning out of something that just took the wind out of our sails.
Yeah.
And just knocked us, and hurt our heart so deeply, and trying to not either feel it or acknowledge that it happened, or try to overcompensate because of the pain that that brought of getting knocked down. Like, what can I do to act like that did not happen, but it did. It did. And I think that's why we relate to these stories about, could that be me? Could I overcome? Could I believe I'm the one, not in a savior or messiah complex, but somebody that can make a difference. It's very hard to do that when you've been devastated by something and you have to be rescued. It's a place of vulnerability that especially we as men do not like. And don't know really well what to do with that. Where do you go as a boy with that sort of pain? Usually what happens is we get shamed for it. And it's one of those messages we locked away, at least I did, of like, well, I've got to learn to buck up and be a man, and when do you become a man? When do you become a man and not this wounded, downed rider? And I get to see that with a lot of men, and it's really a privilege to see that perseverance and resilience. But often we're not looking at it that way. We're looking at it that we're still wounded, and because of that pain, we can so easily turn that, inward. About there's something we think is implicitly wrong with us, like it's just we were created to be not good enough, or whatever that shame message may be, that venom you're talking about. And so it's not the event, although the event's bad in and of itself, but it's that message that's going along with it. Now, who wants to be the downrider? That's why I asked last time, is the downrider a soldier? Because the soul, it's like you forget you're a soldier. You forget you are a son of the king still. even though you got down, because it's like, I sure didn't feel that way.
And that's easy to forget when your identity is attached to, I'm nothing but a lowly sinner, saved by grace. You know, that false humility will keep you in that space. And what happens when that shame comes in is, well, we want to be the guy. We want to be tough, right? We see, for me, it was like Rambo. You know, he's fighting in the scene where you literally see the hole through his abdomen, or, you know, his side. He's like, yeah. I'm like, what? You know, he cauterizes it. I'm like, how does, yeah,
Without losing
yeah,
consciousness.
yeah.
That's what you
Like
do.
I'm going to be that guy, or John Wayne, or whatever. Like
Yeah.
it's sewn throughout our father's story and our father's stories, where they got to suck it up and pull themselves up by the bootstrap. I mean, literally, if you want to peel it back to just even the Declaration of Independence, I wrote a paper on this in grad school. That when I came up with this whole idea of submission leadership, you know, I had to create a leadership model in my graduate studies, and I wrote about the inability to submit to what God is up to, and to recognize what that truly is literally written into the DNA of our country,
Yeah.
with a Declaration of Independence.
Yeah.
That's good to not submit to tyranny, but to not truly submit to what God's purpose and will is. And you can see it in there by the fact that we declared, you know, the right to pursue life, liberty, and happiness for all people, while they held within their own grasp, our founding fathers, the very ability to pursue life, liberty, and happiness for an entire population of people.
Yeah. We just got back from, went to Monticello, behind the scenes of Jefferson, you know, and got to read that first paragraph out loud in celebration of the 250th birthday of our country.
Yeah.
He was in his 30s when he wrote this. And it's just the idea of like having that mentality that if you buck against the system that will kill you, literally, they knew they would be hanged for treason. And they come up with that idea of, we have, you know, all men are created equal, and that those rights are self-evident.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but what did that look like, the follow through? They didn't know. It was going to be like, this is where we're going to start. But it was on us to figure out how that's going to look now. So here's freedom. What are you going to do with it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what happens when you have freedom and you've been devastated? You've had tremendous trauma happen, you know, to your life. Yeah, you can give somebody freedom, but that doesn't mean they feel free.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like the idea that you're forgiven, you're set free from the consequences of what sin can bring you. But what does that life look like after? And if you stay in that identity, like we've talked about, of that you're just a wretched, you know, sinner or whatever, and not understanding that, no, that was just part of what happened to me. It's not who I am.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get to where you're not always needing to be rescued in that sense?
So two things on that. How did the Israelites handle that?
Mm-hmm.
They were removed from Egypt. Their bodies were, but their minds were still there.
Yeah.
That's the power of trauma, PTSD. Another way of looking at that is the snake bite. This is how I define this in the book, that it's not the fangs, the literal fangs puncturing your flesh, though it does hurt, but that's not what does the damage. That flesh wounds heal easily. It's the venom that can kill you. Maybe it doesn't kill you, but it can make your arm rot off, or leave a big rotting hole where you have a chunk of flesh out, or who knows, right?
Leave long-lasting impact.
Right. So the fangs, that's hard, it's tough, it hurts, but it's the venom that can kill you. What happens to you in life matters, yes, but it's the venom that does the lasting damage. And the venom is what we come to believe about ourselves, about others, and most importantly about God in the events that take us out. And that's why Satan loves to shoot us off our horse. And like 1 Peter 5:8-9 says, that he prowls around like a roaring lion looking for somebody to devour. And because of that, Peter said, be alert, be of sober mind. Your enemy, he says, the devil. So we have to recognize not just that the enemy's around there, But what is the damage that he does? You know, it's not just metaphorical, it's legitimate, it's real. You know, uh, we'll get more into the arrows and the venom later. Um, but I really want to paint the picture of being down. And not everybody's been on a horse. I realize that. Not everybody gets the whole army scene of the painting. I get that too. What is the Outrider? When you see the picture of my bunkie, or you see the hat, or you hear me talk, or you see me, like, well, I'm not that kind of a person. You know, no, you're not. But that doesn't mean that you're not a beloved son. You know, and I'm not. There are people out there way better than me. I grew up on horses. I taught Jason, my cousin, how to ride, who brought this whole concept of the Outrider in training, and like they do in the horse detachment for the U.S. Army in Fort Hood, is to earn their spurs. Right? They come in. They start out in C group, and they have to continue to move their way up to A group. And A group are the guys that get to really perform. He also got to lead a procession for the one of the inaugural parades. I think it was Trump's first one, where he was able to ride and carry his unit's flag. In that, he wound up winning the national cavalry competition in Oklahoma before he got out. So he went from, you know, being my little tag along buddy and me trying to teach him how to do stuff, to being a national champion. So there are people who are better than me. You know, there are lots of people who are better than me with horses. I mean, I honestly haven't, to be just transparent and vulnerable in that regard, since I've stepped into ministry, I haven't been on a horse because it's just life. You know,
Right.
Shot off my horse, and I started moving in the direction of my glory, and that really pissed Satan off.
We gotta get you back on a horse.
I was about to say the same thing.
We
Yeah.
all three need a
All
horse.
three need
Yeah,
to get on the horse.
Yeah, I did set on
Next
one. So my
podcast.
cousin raises horses. He raises draft horses, and Belgians and Clydesdales. Like, he's just these massive horses, not the kind that I would, you know. But that was the last one I sat on and rode him around his yard.
Well, you'll always get to tell Jason, like, don't ever forget where you came from.
Yeah,
son.
yeah.
Who taught you?
But the idea of what it means to be down when you're riding a horse, I know a lot of people who love horses, love to look at them, but won't get anywhere close to them because of fear.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it's not because of their own fear; it's because of inherited fear. Because their dad or their mom were bucked off of a horse, or they went to a cousin's house and got kicked or something when they were kids. So no, you'll not ever. And so that fear is bestowed. So it may not have even happened to you. It's generational fear that's been passed down, so you don't even get to engage.
Yeah, I have a distinct memory of this this old fella at the end of the road I grew up on. His name was Mr. Kerr, and he had 300 plus acres. So I got to run on 400 acres as a kid. You know, you think everybody, you just don't know till you get older, like what a blessing having access to land like that was. And he had a black horse named Midnight. And I remember watching him plow with Midnight, and that horse was so gentle, big horse though, powerful. And he brought it into my uncle's yard one day, and he asked if we wanted to get up on it. And I had no fear. I mean, I walked up, and, you know, I remember looking up at the back of that horse, and I was going to get up on it. And just as I was about to get up on it, my dad said, "Be careful, it can hurt you." And I remember this fear being bestowed upon me in that moment of, oh, I could get hurt. And I stopped. And that stayed with me. And the times I've rode, like, it comes back. And it's like, you know, I have to get through that because I don't want the horse to feel that.
Yeah.
But, you know, that horse was so gentle. It wasn't the horse that made me scared. It was that message from my dad, who, no doubt, you know, didn't want his son to get hurt, but it was his own fear too.
Yeah.
Because that horse was ready, but, you know, real gentle. You know, how many other times have we been ready to do something, you know, with our life, and fear of the generation before us, you know, gets bestowed upon us? That's a downed, you know, rider. And somebody, as you get older, say, "Oh, it's not a big deal." Well, that stuff can come up, you know, as you and I see all the time, that then gets in the way of something else. And we thought it was just a little thing. You know, a lot of fear has been given to us.
Yeah.
We weren't born with it.
No.
We were given it or taught it.
Yeah. Well, there's instinctual, like, fear is not a bad thing, right? It can help guide us in what you do with it, right? The courage, they say, isn't the absence of fear, it's how you face it, right? So
Right.
fear in and of itself is not a bad thing. And, um, because scripture says fear God also. It's more about reverence and respect,
Right.
recognizing what you're against and moving with respect, which is what I always say when somebody's around a horse, like, don't be afraid, but respect the power that's there.
Yeah.
So there's another character, actually, while we're on that particular topic about respecting what's there and the power that is. Someone once asked me what the horse represents. The horses in the painting. They represent that power and strength, but it's the humility of power and strength harnessed towards Jesus, guidance that the horses represent. Humility,
Mhm.
the cowboy definition, if you will, if you could put it that way, is harnessed strength. It's what you see in a horse. They have the power to overtake you and do whatever it is that they want. But whenever you move in operation of training a horse through love, through guidance, through care, horse whisperer type stuff.
Yeah.
There are clips all over the internet where you can see good men and good women training horses with love to introduce them to things and to guide them through it so that their fear is met with peace, with calm, and then they become unafraid of the things. Bags, swinging bridges, a little trash bag or a scarf tied on the end of a string so that they don't get spooked when something flushes as you're riding. I've been on a horse and riding in the Buffalo National Forest in northwest Arkansas, and came around. I was on my own. I had to leave the group that I was with and get back home for some stuff. So I was trekking off. I had about a 2-hour ride by myself, which was
Oh, nice.
pretty epic,
Yeah.
to be honest with you. Ran up on some deer, and I don't know who was more afraid, them or the horse. I was definitely puckered. But when I heard something, I thought, well, maybe we'll see some more. So I kind of eased around this cedar tree, and the horse, I could feel his heart just thumping through the fender on the saddle on my leg. He was not willing to go. Usually it's like wherever I point this horse's nose, that's where he's at. But it was like just dancing with my spurs, just kind of just to prod him along, not hurting him, but just touching him. It's like, no, we're doing this. We're going around this tree. Couldn't see anything, but I heard a lot of stuff over there. So we got around the tree,
Yeah.
and there were about 30 wild hogs. They exploded, and he was immediately 30 feet in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Literally, if it was an animated cartoon, it would have been one of those like, Wile E. Coyote, where the whole thing moves and he's just stuck in the air, and then he
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
I don't know how I stayed on him. I really don't. I
Yeah.
did, but
Grace of God.
man, so you got to listen to what you're in care of also, right? And so the horse has that power. He was telling me, but he humbled himself to my guidance, and then we almost humbled myself
Yeah.
into a pit full of wild hogs. Maybe there's some analogy there instead of vipers. Because they could tear you up, but luckily we were okay. This idea of what it is to be down, though, like it can be a calculated shot from the enemy. It could be your own doing, your own foolishness, your own stupidity, or it could be just friendly fire.
Yeah.
I'll tell a story in the book called the Ride on Old Red. My cousin, it's actually my cousin James, it's Jason's oldest brother. We were closer in age. They were up from Texas on spring break. We wanted to go fishing, so we thought, well, let's saddle up Red and go for a ride and see if the fish are hitting the water on the back pond. So we did, and we were riding, and I'm sitting in the saddle, and he's behind the saddle, and she's not. They had just come up. She ran with the cows, and they had just gotten up. She wasn't too keen on going back, but again, she submitted to my guidance, and we made it to the back pasture. And he was just a little excited when I heard him get there, so he started kicking her, like, whatever, just trying to get her to go. But where he was sitting, he was kicking her in the flanks, and she was like, "All right, I'm done," and started crow hopping, and then like went into a full buck. But he was on the back, so I've got like a hold of her reins, trying to pull her head back so she'll stop.
Yeah.
And he grabs. I mean, he's got a death grip on my chest, and like it only about $3, and he catapulted off. But because of his grip on me, I went with him, and we fell off in the mud, and I just remember sitting there looking at Red, finally able to do what she wanted, to get back to the cows,
She went back to the
her
cows.
beloved bovines, and just the stirrups just flapping like wings, as she's just running away from us. That's what it is to be down. And sometimes it's really by nobody's fault. It just an accident happens. Something happens to us in life because we're human. Stuff happens.
Yeah.
It's not of anybody's ill will or intent. Friendly fire, if you will, can take us out sometimes. James didn't mean anything ill. He just didn't want to go. He didn't want to get thrown off the horse, right? He was just excited to go fishing.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Not everything happens to us that is uncomfortable or bad is trauma.
Yeah.
Not everything. Sometimes
sure.
it's just like you got, bucked off because your cousin was kicking in the flanks.
Yeah.
But what meaning do we give to some of these things? Mm-hmm. And I think that's that venom.
It was a dink to pride.
Yeah.
Yeah, what we believe. Because I had never been bucked off before.
Yeah.
And there I was.
Do you remember what you thought about? Was there any thought that came up about your ability to ride, or?
For me, so the pose, I'll talk about that in this chapter where we get there, right? What the things, it's the exoskeleton that we put on to protect the internal lie from being exposed, the pain of it. And my pose at that time was Rambo. And it wasn't just because of one particular thing that had happened. One, I had lost the affection of my father, about 5 years old, in the Mize bloodline. There's no more affection from the father. Mm-hmm. It's time to be a man at 5 years old, So, and then there's some stuff in his life, his own trauma and the things that happened to him that had him check out on me. And he wasn't present. He was there. He was around. He was always providing for my survival.
Yep.
Physically.
Yeah.
But his attunement to my heart was non-existent. Yeah. And of course I didn't care. And you can't show any emotion from that. And if you try to talk about that, then you're just a big pansy.
That's right.
So I just doubled down on that external armor because I saw Rambo, cauterize his wound with gunpowder. I'm going to do the same thing. And you just didn't see me bleed. Mm-hmm. And so it's pride, the protection of it, that will keep you in that place of being a downed rider and not realizing that the pain that you're carrying wasn't intended for you, number one, but also that pain that you thought you cauterized, you didn't. It's just bleeding on everybody else around you.
Yeah. Or like internal bleeding, which, is deadly.
Yeah. Yeah. Kills you softly from the inside.
Mm-hmm. I think something that we're naming here, especially amongst men, like it is really hard to acknowledge or admit that I am a down rider.
Yeah.
In the moment, there's almost like a negative connotation that we just assume, because who wants to be the down rider, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's just easier to live under the delusion that I'm okay. I'm fighting my way through. But so many women and men especially, like, are just really struggling with dealing with the realities of their story. So like at other men's events, like I would talk to men at like how essential it is to like pursue healing. Mm-hmm. Like we can't live as the beloved sons. We can't live out that identity. We can't be the outrider that we have the grace to be if we're bleeding out on the field. Mm-hmm. We could be literally like living out like a life of death that has no fruit, but not even be able to see it because we're just so like wrapped up in our hurt. And so like I feel like one thing we need to accomplish is like how do we help men understand that it's okay just to acknowledge this is where I'm at in life. How can we help people understand that um, that it's okay to ask for help.
I don't know that there's a mass way to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I've tried. Um, my little, well, of course, my approach to ministry has started out being on my own. And that's kind of what I learned. I'm not carrying anybody on a horse again, you know. Um, I'm just going to ride by myself. Found myself conditioned to being better off alone, you know. And that's because of the absence of my father's love and presence, um, which is a major theme that I share throughout the book, even getting towards the end. The final two chapters are the man I had and the man I needed. And the way that I was able to become the man that I needed instead of the man that I had was by staying close to Jesus. This relentless pursuit that God invited me onto of truth over tradition just kept me pulled to that path. My orientation would repeatedly get blown off course. My drift angle would shift frequently.
Mm-hmm.
But there was an orienting statement that Jesus gave me when I began this journey. He said, "You trust in the destination." And again, the destination is not what heaven or hell. It's the man that you become. You trust in the destination. Trust also in the journey. Because I was wanting to skip ahead. You know, hurry up. You know, we use movie clips at men's events because they're like moving parables or modern day parables that
Right.
help to tell the story. But what happens when we see those movie clips is we want our life to unfold at the pace of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's not just the movie clip, we want it to move at the pace of that movie clip that we just saw. But even if you allowed the space of that movie, oh, I want to be like that. I want to be William Wallace. Well, that's good. How did William become William? You see a little bit at the beginning, then major trauma in his life.
Mm-hmm.
Then what happens? Uncle Argyle comes in.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the most important part of that entire movie doesn't even exist. It's
Yeah.
the time that he spent with Uncle Argyle,
Yeah.
becoming.
How did
How
learn to
did
speak
young William
Latin?
become old William?
Yeah. Speak
Yeah.
French.
Wield
Handle
a
a sword.
Yeah.
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 So like, how did that happen? That's what the answer, Chan, I think, is. Men need to see that, and the only way that they're going to see that is one by one. We enter into that story for ourselves and then begin to share it. Well, here's the answer. Here's the answer. We overcome evil by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. Revelation 12:11. That's how it's done. You can overcome it all, first and foremost, by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of your testimony, your story, being authentic to being washed, wrapped up, covered by the blood of Jesus to overcome all of the trauma, all of the pain, all the lies, all of the demonic influence that exists in this world and is passed down from generation to generation. It's the blood of Jesus that keeps us protected and set free and brought to life in all of that. And then sharing the authenticity of our encounters with Jesus along the way as we move from teknon to weos, our testimony, our story. That's how we can invite men and women, because in marriages, this is all, the whole outrider concept isn't just masculine.
Yeah. For
It
sure.
it exists for both the feminine heart and the masculine heart, and there's no greater place that it plays out than for your marriage.
Thinking of times I've seen all my kids be the downrider,
Yeah.
you know, and the battles that they had to go through that I could not do for them.
Mm-hmm.
I could not reach in their heart and make them not feel the way they were feeling. Although if I wanted to, and if I could, I would, but to come alongside them and just speak belief into them and, validate my love and care for them. But yeah, I would say everyone could relate to this concept that you've got of the downrider, whether they've rode a horse or not.
Mm-hmm.
What is it like to need to be picked up, to be rescued? I think the struggle is wondering, is that going to happen? Could that happen for me? It didn't happen. Could it happen now? What would that look like now? And what's coming up as you dig into the blood of the Lamb and the word of the testimony. It's like, what does, how do I get there? How do I get to be able to say that confidently with my own story? And that there's a process in this of understanding that I'm still beloved. I'm still a son or daughter of the King, but then I need to be picked up. I need to be rescued because I am hurting, and that someone does care. And then what? Right. And I know I get a lot of pressure at times with work I do about, how do you fix this? And I just came back from a church that is doing a great job in demonstrating this, but they are the exception to the rule, because usually what happens is you're down and you get shot more
Yeah.
in an attempt to help. It's like that Major Payne scene where, where you're hurt, you want me to take your mind off that, and he breaks the thumb, and it's like a lot of folks have more stories like that than they do being picked up and rescued. So could that really, I'm great that happened for you, Joseph. I'm great that happened for you, Chan, but that's not my story,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what do I do with that? And helping people to understand, like what you just said, God doesn't answer our prayers like we can get money out of an ATM.
Right.
He answers in his own time. And that just because what you wanted to happen and didn't happen doesn't mean something incredible is not going to happen.
Yeah.
And having to grab our hearts and, once again, have hope that we can be fully restored.
Yeah.
Fully redeemed. It's hard to believe when you're that down rider.
Yeah.
When you're that down rider, you're hurting, you're disoriented, you're frustrated, you're sad, you're mad, you're scared, and even getting rescued, like the picture, that of how you describe, like getting picked up, like one wrong move, the down rider could get ran over. That's scary, but you picking me up when I'm not, when I've got a concussion or whatever, the situation may be. What is that going to look like for us? So I would validate, like, it can be disorienting.
Yeah.
The getting rescued part could even be disorienting. It doesn't mean that it's not what you need, but to take you from a place you were that is wounded and bleeding out or bleeding in, so to speak, and then getting picked up, it's scary, because what if that's the only thing I know? Yeah, we see that all the time. It's the only thing I know. And to help people understand that it doesn't have to stay that way. I think that's a lot of question I see men battling. It's like, I don't even understand how to get there.
Yeah.
How do I get to a place where I know what it feels like to be rescued?
Yeah. That's why I move for belovedness above all else. Because if you don't think that you're worthy, you can't receive this as your reality.
Yeah.
If you don't think that you're worthy, you can't receive belovedness as your reality. And it's belovedness that is the anchor of hope and trust and faith that Jesus is going to do for me what he said he'll do, and that I've seen in other people.
I think the sad reality is so much of our stories are shaped by our experiences in life, and it's not all good. There are many people who come and sit on our couches that their lives have been defined by their downed status. The state of being the downed rider has become their story, and their whole worldview gets shaped by that. As you talk about like this transition, this process of maturing from teknon to weos, or answering the question in, like you said, like when do I go from being a boy to like being a man who is like solid and firm and knowing who he is? I think there's a question there, like, who answers that question for us?
Jesus said, "You shall know them by their fruit." The fruit will always reveal the root. 100% of the time, the fruit reveals the root. So how do you know that you've gotten to that place? One is, don't look for a transaction. There's no switch to flip to becoming a better man. There's no methodology.
Even though there are 1,000 books out there on how do I become the better man, right?
Yeah, and we want the 5 steps or a checklist or give me this. And even the Outrider could be placed into that category, though I really intentionally try to write it to be different. But there are paths. right? So you could take those paths and the core longings, and you could put them in that same kind of a category. Well, this is a framework of a model that I have to follow. No, there's one model that I will agree to. The answer is simply submit. You have to submit to what Jesus is up to and just stay on the path with him. So I'm hoping that in that framework that does exist in the Outrider, that the idea of it being a path, that there's no destination other than becoming the man that God created you to be, becoming the woman that God created you to be, being revealed as you were already created to be, requires walking with Jesus. It's just a process that takes time. There's not a method, but there is a journey.
Can I drop down even lower and ask you guys a vulnerable question?
Go for it.
When did you both know you were a man?
Dang, Ian.
Well, okay.
Joseph
Maybe
Mize, when did
maybe
you
we
know you
back
were a
that
man?
up and say, like, let's define man, right? Because there are many different definitions, many different ways that the world will define what a man is.
Or when did you think you were a man?
When did I think I
Yeah.
was a man? When I stood up to my dad for the first time,
How old were you?
15. So I want to shift with a trail marker here for what it is to be a downrider. I want you to ask Jesus to reveal to you where you were first thrown from a horse. Not a physical horse. I'm speaking metaphorically here. When did you become a downrider? Where were you thrown? Was it a moment or a season? Some of us, there is a specific moment that totally shattered us. Then how did that experience change the way you saw yourself, others, and God? Something happens to us when we're thrown. We're wounded, right? We take on the pain of the event, but what we believe is what shapes us. So this is not something to figure out. I just want to invite you to invite Jesus into the process, asking the questions, and then shut up and listen.
Will do.